Okay. Well, we left off on the slide that speaks on emotional and behavioral experiences. The other day we made a list of emotions. What are some of the emotions that we came up with?
Excited.
Excited.
Nervous.
Nervous.
Glad.
Sad. Happy. What else?
Overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed. Valerie?
Stress.
Stress? Okay. Over here on this side?
Anxious.
What's that?
Anxious.
Anxious. Okay, very good. Now, there's one thing to remember. This is very crucial as we come to the end of this school year, is that you look at emotions and the way that we behave to separate stimuli is this. Emotions are different than responses. So we have the emotions and then we have the response, which is called the behavior. Does everybody understand that? So it's not one and the same. So we have to realize that those things that stress us out to change the behavior. There is a theory called REBT, Rational Emotive Behavioral Therapy. And you use it to change the responses that people have about negative experiences. They use a process of what's called the ABCDE process, as in the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E. A is the stimuli, the thing that happens, the activating event. What is activating my behavior? Well, it's stress or it's schoolwork. And then the B is the behavior or the irrational belief that we have to act a certain way because this stimuli impacted us. C is the consequence of the behavior. So we got mad. Now what is happening to our body physiologically? Alisa, what is happening to our body physiologically?
People have different reactions.
Okay, Betsabel?
Blood pressure.
What physical thing has happened?
Rash.
Stress, but what is happening physiologically? What is happening to our heart rate, Betsabel? Okay. What is happening to our blood pressure? You're exactly right. Now, the C is challenging of the A, B, C, D. The C is challenging the behavior and challenging the A, the activating event. So do we really have to be upset about things?
No.
I won't go too far into this, but I just want to make it a point to say that the E is the total response, the change of the behavior, and the new way that we are going to behave to those stimuli that activates the irrational beliefs. I'm driving. Somebody cuts me off. That's the activating event. I have learned that I must speed on or get on top of them or tell them and honk my horn or pull to the side of them and act out. That is the irrational belief that I have to do that. Do I really have to do that?
No.
No. What is the consequence of doing that?
Many.
What are all the possibilities of the consequences of the irrational belief that I have to drive up on that individual, shoot the finger at him, honk the horn at him, get on his tail, go in front of him and slam on the brakes, or invoke a confrontation? What are the consequences?
Crash.
Okay, Valerie, what's going to happen?
You can either hurt someone else, or depending on the person, they could shoot you. I've heard that a lot in the news.
Wow, you're exactly right. That's right. You could hurt somebody else. What if I get on the side of them and I run off somebody off the side of the road? You're exactly right. Or you're 100% correct in that you don't know who you're messing with and you could get shot at. What else? What happens to your day for the next 2 or 3 hours, or possibly the rest of the day?
Yeah, ruin your day.
You're going to be mad? Someone said mad. What else? Or what other emotion may we experience?
Frustrated.
Frustrated.
Rage.
Okay, what else? Tense. Now, is that going to affect our job? Is that going to impact your life? How is that? First off, how is it going to impact your life?
You're gonna take it against other people,
Oh, what other people?
like your coworkers.
Your co-workers. What else?
Boss.
Your boss, your job. Then you go home to your loved ones, and your boyfriend or husband's going to say, hey, give me a kiss. And you're like, I don't want to talk to you right now. Get away from me. I had a bad day. You choose to have a bad day. You don't have to have a bad day. Does everybody understand that? So that our irrational belief that we have to be upset is just that, an irrational belief. And we have to realize that there's consequences. So we have to challenge those disturbing things or the irrational beliefs and say, I do not have to act like this, and invoke a new behavior. For example, now I get cut off. I can pull back and say, well, obviously that person's having a bad day. Better he have a bad day than I have a bad day. Or the belief is, I'm going to pull up in front of him and start a confrontation. No, because he may have a gun or whatever other situation is going to be prompted from that point on. Does everybody understand? So, there were two things here. The emotions and the behaviors. You have to realize that those are two different entities. They do not have to be related, but we make them related. And we learn how to respond to the stimuli from who? Who has taught us to react? Where do we learn things from? Where's the number one place that we learn things from? Your home, your family. You're exactly right. For bonus points, can you tell me where else you learn things?
School.
School. What else? Education. What else?
Work. TV.
Media.
What's that?
TV.
TV. Media. You're exactly right. You're missing one big one.
Church.
Arlene, which one are they missing?
Religion. Government.
Government. Okay, but that's not the one I'm looking for.
Religion.
Religion. You're exactly right. Okay, so those are the pillars of institutionalization that we've gone over with before. But the family is the number one point in which we gather the way that we react to things. Specifically, our mother. Early on. The mother is the number one person that we spend more time with as an infant. So we're able to look at her facial expressions while she's leaning over the crib, or the way that she responds. And we could feel that stress that she feels, and how is she acting to that stress. How she's acting, how her emotions are being impacted, or her behavior is being impacted by the irrational beliefs of the emotion. But then when we get older, when we're 5 or 6 or 7, we see our father getting into confrontation, honking the horn or getting on somebody's back. How many of y'all's relatives have you seen do that growing up? Okay, Alyssa, what did you see?
Grandma has horrible road rage.
Your grandmother has terrible roid rage. Okay, roid. She could be on steroids also, so she could have a roid rage. Okay, but you said road rage. Okay, all right. Oh,
My brother.
your brother?
Yeah.
Is he older than you? Okay. Anyone else?
My brother too.
Your brother?
I am my older brother.
Your older brother? My father was notorious. My father, man, I had to break a lot of molds. I had to smash those modes of behavior. But my father was the type of guy, if he gets cut off, he would follow you, wait for you to park, and then punch your tires out. Okay, that's the kind of person he was. Okay, so anyhow, so back to the REBT. Hopefully you learned something today in the realms of how to respond to stimuli and how to invoke positive thoughts. Whenever you're upset, you don't have to be upset. Whenever you're sad, you don't have to be sad. Some of us have anxiety. And generalized anxiety is very prominent amongst the population. However, very little people go and seek therapy for that generalized anxiety. So when I say most of us in this room have anxiety of some sort, it's very difficult to say, no, I'm not going to behave in that way once the stimuli has already impacted your body, okay, physiologically. Now, we can recognize that stimuli, though. You can be taught to recognize that stimuli. We know that if you drink a lot of coffee, you're going to be stressed out. That's the number one thing that a psychiatrist will speak of, or a counselor will, in the very beginning, will ask you, are you doing any drugs? Do you drink any beer? Or do you smoke cigarettes? Or do you drink coffee? And if you say, yes, I drink about 8 cups a day, they're going to say, that'll be $500. Thank you very much. Stop drinking coffee. Next. It's simple. Stop drinking coffee. The only thing is, people are addicted to caffeine, and they need it. They need that fix. And if they don't have that fix, they get tense. But they get more tense. The level of anxiety rises with the more caffeine that we take, that we intake. So people are walking around like Beavis, that one episode where he drank a cappuccino. I think they got free cappuccino for the lifetime, and they kept on drinking it. And then he was bouncing around all over. Anyway, okay, so we talked about being sad, getting our heart broken. Do you really have to go into a state of depression?
No, you make yourself feel like that.
What's that?
You want to feel yourself like that? You make you feel.
You do. You make yourself feel that way. Now, we all know that we're bound by emotional ties, and we start playing back all the emotion and the experiences and the still photographs of the experiences that we had with that other person. But after a day or two, after a week, you have to start saying, you know what, that's enough. I've grieved for a week. It's time to go on and move on to whatever else I have in my life. That doesn't necessarily mean you get into another relationship. That just means that you grieved, it's time to move on. But all of us experience grief in a certain way, and we also experience the grief of losing someone in our family. As I told you before, the older you get, the more people start dying. Uncles, aunts, grandparents, the elder people in your immediate family, your father's friends, your mother's friends, cousins, aunts. People start dying the older you get. And the older you get, all your peers start dying. If you're 70 or 80 years old, people that you went to high school with, now half of them are dead. We all go through that. And we all go through the stages of grief. We won't go too much into the stages of grief, but I'll just let you know that in the very end, it's acceptance. You accept it. And say, okay, well, it's happened, it's time to move on. Any other last thoughts on the way we respond to things, emotions? How can you soothe stressful feelings that make your life unpleasant and threaten to get you off course? From this point on, how do you teach or how do you relate to this? How can you respond to stressful situations? Let's just stick with the concept of going to school, your freshman year. How can you deal with stressful situations? You have a term paper coming up in 2 weeks. How can you deal with the stress of that term paper being due in 2 weeks?
Finish it off right away.
Start early.
What's that, Shiraz?
Start early.
Start early, finish it off early. Start getting an idea of how you're going to go. Throughout my career, especially later on when I got to my graduate schooling, whenever there would be a paper that was due, I would work on it in my head. I would think of the introduction before even writing it down. I would think of the introduction, how I'm going to go about it. What concepts am I going to follow? What are going to be my pillars of support? What is going to be my thesis statement? There was times when I would wake up in the middle of the morning and get a sheet of paper out and write down, oh, that'd be a great thesis statement. Because if not, I'd forget about it. When I'd wake up, I was like, what was that thesis statement again? So you could still be working on it in your head. But you definitely cannot put it on a shelf and then say, I'm going to come back to that later. What if you're tied by emotion in a relationship that is toxic and you keep on trying to work things out, but it's now impacting work, it's now impacting school, it's impacting your health. Your stomach is constantly nervous. You are so stressed out. What are some of the things that you could do? Well, what should you do? You have to start thinking about moving on in another direction because that's what's best and that's what's healthy for you. Is that Drake?
No, it's just the ringtone just went off.
Okay. All right, any last questions? Yeah, before we move on? Okay, let's move on. The whole point is realize the activating event, the thing that's stressing you out, realize that there's behavior and there's emotions and differentiate between the two. Okay, now, moving right along. What is stress? Stress is any interference that disturbs a person's mental or physical well-being. Was it this class the other day I was talking about the glass of water? Somebody asked, what is heavier, a glass of water or this? A professor once asked. And the student said he would rather hold water. And they made the student hold the water out like this. And after a minute or two, the water started getting heavy and the arms started getting heavy. And they they couldn't hold it up any longer. They were like, ah. Well, the lesson was that water's like stress. In the very beginning, it was not heavy. But if you carry it around long enough, it really becomes heavy and it starts wearing down on you. In this case, it was my arm. The stress of carrying this water was great, so great that it started hurting me and burning. And the same thing impacts you. The same thing applies when thinking about the stress that you carry around. Sooner or later, you have to let that stress go and realize that sometimes pegs are not meant for circles and circles are not meant for squares. Does that make sense to you? Okay, let's move right along. And that's the end of this lecture. Any last thoughts?